Our world continues to change and push us in ways we have not been challenged before. On this show, we talk about these challenges, how to be aware of them, face them, and overcome them in your life. This is David Waldas, creator of the Aligned Living System.
And I'm Nick Musica, Aligned Living Coach. Welcome to the Aligned Living System podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Aligned Living System podcast. This is David Waldas here with Nick Musica. It's been really fun the last couple weeks talking about the coaching academy, the coach training academy that we are launching late September, third week in September. And, as I've been exploring how to talk about it, it's really helped me understand aligned living in a little bit different way. I'm so often talking about it in the sense of teaching people how to enter that container, how to work with these tools. And as I've been looking at it through that lens of how do I talk to people about what happens when you become the role of the healer, the role of the coach, the role of the person who brings that energy through. That idea of that threshold, that place where we're either dropping down into that 3D duality consciousness, that place where, instantly whatever we experience has a polarity. And so that is a third dimension. It's duality. It's right and wrong, black and white, good and bad. And anything that exists in the positive exists in the negative. And then there's this threshold, right? And when we get above that threshold, we move into, we can call it fifth dimensional energy. And that's really what's happening on the planet. That's what we're moving into. But when we move above, when we move above that threshold, all of a sudden we move out of the range of duality. And in that place, it's where we can access all this light. And when we're accessing all this light, we don't have its counterpart there. And life becomes so much smoother. And so I wanted to start by reading this quote. This is actually from Carl Jung. And it's interesting because he's one of the fathers of psychology, but he was so esoteric. He wrote a book called Synchronicities about, like it starts out with him talking about having the synchronicities with his mother and being able to be aware of them being aware of each other and in sync with each other. I think they were I'm not sure, but they were great distances apart. And this was he did all this work with archetypes, which is what the tarot is based on. And so he was a very esoteric person, even though, he's one of the fathers of psychology, really. And so this is one of his quotes. And he said, "No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." And so again, no tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. And a lot of people think of that in terms of perseverance, right? The idea that, unless you've really been through some shit, you're not really going to be able to create big things. And we see that as evidence, right? We see all of us that are out in the world doing big things. We've been through some shit. And that's one meaning of it. But I think there's another meaning. And that other meaning says that when we bring a lot of light in the third dimension, in this duality consciousness, in this place where polarities, simply exist as a rule, that as much light as we bring, that actually literally creates that much darkness. Because in order for us to have that much light, its counterpart has to exist. That's a law of the third dimension. And so when we talk about that threshold, where we move from that third dimensional reality of duality consciousness, of polarities, meaning that if we bring all this light into the third dimension, we're also bringing all of this darkness because it has to have a counterpart, that we're literally the creators of darkness by being the creators of light in that place. And so when we move above that threshold, we can actually hold as much light without creating that darkness. And so I know Nick and I were talking about other things before we got on the podcast. And so I'm just dropping this into Nick's world in real time with y'all. And so welcome, Nick. How are you doing? And how are you processing what I was just sharing about Jung and this interpretation of it in a very literal way, rather than in the idea that says, yeah, well, we need to learn perseverance through our struggles so that we can create good things. We need to have experienced bad things. But what about it as an actual rule of reality in the third dimension versus fifth dimension, meaning the old world, new world concept?
Well,
Fear just dropped it on your plate.
yeah,
Good
I'm
morning. How you doing,
fresh.
man?
Good. I'm fresh coming into the conversation. Uh, as we talked about.
You need some time to process before I put you on the spot?
I mean, maybe, but I'll give it a shot. We'll see how that works out. I mean, there was. I remember being introduced to Carl Jung, it's Psych 101 or whatever it was, 102,
Yeah.
101,
Yeah.
102, along with Freud and all the other
Mhm.
uh, pioneers at the time. And I remember uh, being more attractive to what he had to say. It just
Absolutely.
landed. It just sounded reasonable.
Yeah.
It sounded like that's how
Yeah.
things worked. When I was
Yeah.
hearing
Yeah.
the little bits. And I'm pretty sure I may be filling in some blanks, but collective unconscious, I think, is what also one of his. Um,
Yep.
and so those at the time, those little pieces of phrasing for me of Carl Jung, of Edgar Casey, just like the first time I heard reincarnation was Edgar Casey. The first time I heard collective conscious was Jung, and then 20 years went by, and and these things are starting to surface again in more of a meaningful way for me and have places to go. And so when you're talking about this, it's the harkening back to 20 something years ago, and I think I'm undercutting the years, but and then putting it in present day.
Well, at
We don't have
least
to get
five
into
years,
it.
like 7 years ago, it was 20 years ago.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Just last week it was 20 years ago. And then putting into present day context of what it all means
in your
now.
current paradigm.
Yeah, for sure. And what's going out in the world, because that shapes the internal, right? That
Oh, yeah,
has an
absolutely.
impact on the
Yeah.
right. Like we get
Yeah.
to respond to that in one way or the other. We're reacting to that one way or the other, as much as we don't want to react to things. It is a shaping tool. So to hear, and it's funny, it's like yes, in this capacity, 100%, in a 3D capacity, but then how does that serve this over here, and how does it bring us from here to there? I mean, you have to experience it here first, I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then it serves as a vehicle to come over into this reality, which takes us out of uh and not to say things don't get hard and messy and all those things, but it takes us out of the emotional hard and messy, or we get out of them quicker, or there's more of a bouncing back out of that instead of sticking in the mud, where we can then operate over here into that place that you were just
Yeah.
describing.
Absolutely. And a lot of people do that through faith. It's interesting.
Mm.
Uh, there's this young kid that has a Instagram channel. That he goes and talks with all these really successful people. He basically catches them on the street or outside of their a restaurant or a home, and he walks up to him and says, "I have this really successful YouTube channel. Can I ask you a couple questions about or how old were you when you made your first million, or how old were you when you made your first billion?" And he just hooks them in and gets them in these conversations. And almost every one of them talk about God. Almost every one of them talk about their faith. And it's a really interesting piece, because when we look at that threshold too, right? Really what we're saying is there's this threshold where we're connected with a higher power. And, I'm somehow I've become comfortable calling it God. It never was, and it's funny. I've heard more and more people saying, "Oh, it's God." And before, it was always like the universe, like this, higher aspects of me. And absolutely, if that's where you're at, like, call it that. But for some reason now, I was feeling like I'm just feel like I'm just supposed to talk about it as God. And I keep hearing all these other people too. It's like, oh, this is fascinating. Like, why now is God becoming a comfortable term for so many people? But I just add that in, as an interesting aspect of this. But how many people that are really successful say, "Oh, well, I just trust God. It's my faith," and that faith allows them to stay above that threshold, right? Because the moment we drop below the threshold, and it's interesting when we carry all of this light, right, and we do all this work on ourselves to hold this light, and then we drop into the third dimensional reality, something triggers us, and it's like we're basically carrying as much light as the third dimensional reality will allow. And so what does that mean? in that rule that says whenever we create that much light, we create that much darkness. We have something that triggers us, and we bring all this light with us into the third dimension below that threshold, and all of a sudden there's just like this attack that happens. And maybe we can call that attack in different ways. Sometimes people experience it as literal attacks. Sometimes people experience it as just massive resistance. And the number of people that are really spiritually gifted or really in touch with that say, God, I just feel like there's something attacking me all the time. Like there's something against me. Whenever I try to break through, whenever I try to get something, that like whenever I'm almost there, like this resistance comes out of nowhere. And it's always equal to whatever, however strong I feel, that's how strong that resistance is. And the stronger I get, the more powerful I get inside myself, so does the resistance. It's like it's exact. We're like, well, that is the law. If we're operating in the third dimension, no matter how much light we bring, how much clarity, there's also going to be that same resistance showing up. And so when we see these people that are so highly successful, they're above that threshold. And so many of them use their faith and go, well, I just trust in God. And they have this big smile on their face. There's all this light coming out of them. And, if that isn't your belief, you may go, God, they're so delusional. And, if they are, so what? That's holding them above that threshold. And they believe that God is on their side and God is helping them because there is a force that is on their side. There is a force that is helping them. And they're not down below the threshold where they are literally creating the devil. They're literally creating the thing that's in opposition to their goodness. And that threshold, as this clarity is coming, that threshold means everything now, because not only are we not creating the light that we're here to bring, or the transformation, and not only are we experiencing the resistance, we're literally creating the darkness by bringing that much light in there. It's just the rule, the law of the third dimension. And so when we can utilize that sense of like, it's exponential, we're either creating all this light, or we're going down, hitting the resistance, not being able to create with that light, but we're also creating the darkness that is counterpart. Now all of a sudden that threshold becomes exponential in both directions, because it's not just, oh, there's resistance and I'm not able to do this. I'm literally creating something negative by bringing that into that old world. And I'm literally creating something positive and not something negative by staying above that threshold. And, that it's interesting because that's what aligned living is, right? It's the whole idea of it is creating an inner resonance where it's above that threshold and operating from that place. And when we take the bait, we slide down below the threshold and we get entangled in all these other things that are, just our stories. And when we are able to align, we get back up and all of a sudden things start flowing smooth, and there isn't resistance, and there's synchronicities and all this alignment. It's like God is on our side. And then we drop below the threshold and it feels like the devil's trying to get us. And like we've all had that experience, right? Whether it's green lights, right? Like you're in a good place. Like whenever I'm in alignment, green lights are my reality. If I'm and trained in something negative, it's like, oh, another red light. It took me an extra 10 minutes to get home for some reason. Why is that? Like, because that's the reflection, that's the reality. Like we are calling in the resistance by bringing our light below that threshold. And at a massive level, when we've been able to carry that much light.
That's funny. I frequently, when I'm going around trying to find a parking spot with my wife, like I feel like I'm going to find a spot.
Yep.
Like I just feel like unless I'm in like a pissy pants mood, I'm like, oh, it's so many fucking cars, right? But if I'm feeling like I'm going to find a spot, I typically do.
There.
Like 9 out of 10 times I do, and if I don't, I'm just like, I don't like, where's my spot? It's very confusing.
Yeah, I got confused.
But
that's why I always feel
do.
like when I pull into a busy parking lot, I'm like, okay, where's my spot? I'm like, oh, over here. There it is. Yeah. Like,
and I used to call it a parking karma. And the way I explained it to my wife was, I don't know. I used to valet cars. It's parking karma. That seems to make sense right now.
I have a good relationship with it.
Yeah. Right. Knowing that makes no sense.
AKA, I know how to stay above the threshold when I'm parking a car.
I mean, it's a little bit like, at least for me, the expectation is I will find a spot. Therefore I do.
Yeah.
And when I'm pissy pants.
And so that thinking though keeps you in trust. It keeps you in faith, and it keeps you not entangled. You could be
Yes.
thinking, and here's an interesting thing. You could be thinking, oh, I'm going to find a spot. But if you were mad about something else and you're
No.
like,
Mm-mm.
entangled in that and that pulls you below the threshold, that thinking that I'm going to find the spot doesn't work
Doesn't.
because
No.
you're
Yeah.
below the threshold.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
and now you've already created, the polarity of everything. And it's like this part of the thinking, that idea that there's something against us, right? There's nothing against us. I mean, and then the other interpretation is, well, it's all you. And we can say, yeah, that's actually a bit more accurate, is that it's all you. But here's the thing: it's all you creating it. Like if you bring this much light into the third dimension, you're gonna create that much darkness and that much resistance. And when we go, God, it seems like the more powerful I get, the harder, the more challenging things come up. And we go, well, I guess, God knows I'm ready for that I can handle these challenges, that I can work through it, because the more work I do, the bigger the challenges get. It's a threshold problem. And I hope people understand what I mean by threshold. And, anybody that's done the aligned living work knows, like, we go through the consciousness lock, we let go of our entanglement with all that, and we open up internally into a place where we're not entangled, and we're in alignment. We're talking about where our will and God's will align, or our will in the, if you don't like the word God, if you want to say our will in the will of the universe, the creative energy, the organizing energy of the universe, that we align with that. And something very different happens, and it's night and day difference. And this shift in understanding, and like I knew that, but it, like you can kind of float around a concept and all of a sudden it just clicks for you. This clicked for
Mm-hmm.
me last week, and I was like, oh, or even actually earlier this week, that's exactly what this is. And so if you don't like what you're creating, it's a threshold problem. Because, and you can go, well, it's a mindset problem. Well, yeah, because the mindset is pulling you below the threshold. And
Yeah.
so
It
why
starts
is
there.
it that these people, it's funny, I used to have this back when I coached high school soccer, varsity boys team. I had this one player who was probably in the bottom third skill wise on the team, yet he was one of the most effective players on the team. And he was this Mormon kid who just really believed that God wanted him to succeed. And he would run in just like full effort and full expectation of scoring, full expectation of winning the ball, full expectation of, and he was this tiny little skinny kid, and one of the most effective players on the team. And he just stayed above the threshold, and things just parted for him, and it was miraculous. I was like, wow, he's like, I remember just laughing, me like, man, his faith takes him so far. And at that point, I wasn't really spiritual, or I was just kind of opening up to this world. And I was like, it felt kind of like, gosh, how could I manufacture that kind of faith for me? Because I thought it was belief, not I didn't understand the idea of a threshold. But it's very real,
Yeah.
and we can all see examples in our lives and examples everywhere.
So do
Why
you
are so
see
many
a
professional
difference?
athletes?
Do you see a difference between belief and faith? Is there a difference for you?
Yeah, because I think it's a degree of commitment to that belief.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, faith
I
says
have a
that
difference.
I
Yeah.
don't doubt.
That's right. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Faith.
a lot of people go, I'm like 70% sure there's a God. I'm 70% sure I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well, that leaves the 30% that pulls you into
No.
the, below the threshold. And you're like, okay, every once in a while it gets proven to me. But when I'm in a bad mood,
That's
God doesn't exist. When I'm in a
yeah.
good
That's
mood,
right.
God exists. I
Yeah.
don't know. I guess that's just me. Like,
For me, it's an order of operations, right? For faith, it's I believe the thing, and then the thing shows up. And belief is
yeah, yeah.
I'm sort of on board, but in order for me to move faster, better, closer to that place where I want belief to bring me, I need to see tangible evidence, and then I'll be over there. Where faith is just like that's just how it works,
Yeah.
and so we'll
Hmm.
operate
Hmm.
that way. Yeah,
Yeah.
different.
And you talk about being skeptical, right? And I think skepticism is really important when we're looking at, spiritual teachers, when we're looking at
Yes.
personal development, when we're looking at, there's just so much bullshit promise that doesn't deliver, right? And so, yeah, be skeptical in that, but don't be skeptical that there's an organizing energy in the universe that you can align with that can change everything in your reality. And when you do that, like, there's evidence of it everywhere. Why are so many professional athletes Why do they point to the sky afterwards? Why is their their belief in God, it doesn't have to be religious, just their belief in God, their belief in a higher power that is supporting them. Why is that still related with people operating at the highest level? And it's because it holds them above the threshold. And then they can proceed without the same level of resistance or without the resistance. And it's like, wow, it's like the world just keeps opening up for them. Synchronicities keep appearing, but they also have the perseverance. They also keep going at it because they have the faith that they're going to succeed. And people that don't, like, they just run out of steam because they're like, they feel like everything's against them. And it is. And it's funny. It's not that everything's against them. It's that any light that they bring is going to create a polarity, and it's just going to keep butting heads because that is duality consciousness.
Yes.
That's
Well, you're
the
creating it.
reality of that world.
You're creating
You
it.
are, you are. And the fact that we can create the devil, right? That's an interesting thing, right? Because devil is opposition energy. Devil is the thing that tries to make it not happen. The things that tries to make good things not come into fruition. And so when we're
Yes.
creating the energy that does that, it's like, oh shit, like now crossing that threshold means something really different. I don't want to
Well,
bring that energy into this world. I don't
if
want to
I could
birth that energy. Oh.
if I could interject as someone who's been to Catholic school for only 12 years.
All right, let's hear it.
Yeah, here's where finally it's helping me out. What if I recall correctly, part of the definition of hell is the absence of God. And what
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about is, creating the devils, which is, so if there's absence of God, then by default you're
yeah,
here, right? And
yeah.
that is simply what you're creating. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we
in,
move
in the
away
ego world,
from,
right?
yeah, and that's a choice. It's a choice to move
Yep.
closer, or pull away from whatever the thing is we're talking about here, however people want to label it. And after 12 years of
That's a
Catholic
great.
school, I still have a hard
Well,
time
yeah,
picking a
came
label.
through.
Ah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I'm glad you landed on label of God. Like I still struggle with it after 12 years.
yeah, yeah. And I did for years. I didn't want to touch it because I felt like it was so bastardized. Um,
Yeah, and that's certainly part of it. Yeah, and in all the
mhm.
all the things that are associated with uh
Yeah, yeah.
what are the belief system
All
the
the
players
things that
in.
have been done in his name, or
That's
her
right.
name, or its name.
That's right. Yeah,
Uh,
and
yeah,
pick a religion, any religion. It's
yeah,
all it's all there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so that whole piece, that absence of God, right? We make our ego. So let's call God the creator for a moment, right? And so when we leave that, we go below that threshold in the 3D world, we make our ego the creator, right? Because we believe that our ego is creating the world that we are experiencing.
Yeah, yeah.
And when we go above the threshold, our ego takes on a very different role. We actually harness the ego. We become in charge of the ego in order to get shit done, in order to accomplish something, in order to show up. And the creator, God, becomes our creator now, and we align with that, and our will and God's will align. We become resonance with who we truly are, and we bring that without creating the counterpart. We drop below that threshold. We become the creator. Our ego becomes the creator, God, and starts to try to create out in the world. And we go, God, this is hard. Everything I try to create, there's a resistance to.
Mm-hmm,
Everything I try to break through, it's met with the same level of opposition. It's like I can't win.
mm-hmm,
And you're like, well, yeah. Try to do it on yourself. When you make your ego the creator, when you make your ego God, you're creating in polarity, and it never wins. It's stalemate over and over and over again. And there's no miracles. There is no divine intervention there. It's absence of God. And when we move up above the threshold, all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I'm in the zone of miracles. And we talk about the coaching, like, what is our job as coaches? Our job is to be 100 yards past the summit, right? As we talked about in the podcast last week. And if
mm-hmm.
you haven't listened to that podcast, like, go back and listen to that one. I really like what came through for that
Such a
one.
lovely definition. Yeah, it's so cool.
So powerful, right?
Yeah.
And so once we move into that role of our job is to actually bring this miraculous energy to actually to bring the energetic experience where miracles occur, to bring ourselves to that threshold, above the threshold, and in that energy, and to teach other people how to do that. We have to be 100 yards down the road past that, And so we're not struggling with the threshold in the same way anymore because we're not at the threshold. We have to be 100 yards past it in order to deliver the energy as a coach, as a practitioner, as a healer. And that changes everything. And so to me, it's like becoming like when people have been on the aligned living path, becoming an aligned living certified coach, like is the next logical step because it solidifies it. Even if you're just blending it in to your job and running a company, even if you're just blending it into your interactions with other people, and you're not doing it as a literal coach, like being 100 yards down the road changes everything. You're not at the threshold anymore.
That's where I started with it, was me and my immediate world. And then folks would show up every once in a while. Now it's become a more formalized offering. Yeah.
So fun. I mean, it's so exciting to me what's happening. And it's funny, the once I realized this, I realized like, God, I've been below the threshold more than I think I have. And how do you know if you're below the threshold? Are you getting equal and opposite resistance? Is something trying to stop you? Is something against you? And it's not against you. You're manifesting it. You're creating it. You're just below the threshold. And so I guess you could say it is against you, even though it is you. You can say all these things. And so how do we know if we're below the threshold? Resistance. And it's different than being steered, right? Because steering opens up something at the same time as it closes something off.
Yeah, that's
right. Resistance just is like, man, I'm trying to create this, and this thing I know is good, and I know it's effective. I know it's going to help people, and I know it's going to change the world, and I can't get it done because there's all this. And I hear a lot of people say, I can tell I'm really onto something because the dark energy is trying to stop me. Or and I can say, I can tell you're below the threshold because the dark energy is matching your light. Right. And so get above the threshold and go create this shit, because when you're down here in that battle and you're like, oh, it means I got to really double down. I got to push harder and I got to bring more light. But then more darkness shows up. Like, it's like the same exact level at which I'm bringing. Like, well, yeah, that is the law. That's how it works. And when we make that realization, we go, oh, I just need to go vertical. I just need to step deeper into faith, and everything becomes different. And now all this light that I've been building and developing in my capacity to hold and create with, that I haven't been able to hold and I haven't been able to create, but I've been able to hold because of all the resistance, we pop above the threshold, and now instantly we can create. It's like that Brendan Burchard saying of, like overnight success preceded by 20 years of hard work, or 10 years of hard work, I think he says. All right. Well, at what point do we realize that it's us it's a threshold problem, not a light and dark problem, not a opposition problem. It's like we're just trying to create it in the wrong neighborhood.
Yeah.
Powerful stuff, man. This
good talk.
This piece right here, this is the foundation of what aligned living is all about. So exciting. Awesome. Well, great conversation, Nick. I know I talked for most of it and just kind of threw it all on you live in front of everybody. You're like, okay, here you go, Nick. Here's a brand new
Let's go
perspective. What do you think?
Well, I'm glad I was able to harken back to Catholic school. That's always
I know. Saved by the nuns, man. It's good. See, you just had to have faith.
Just had to have faith. Yeah. If only there was a song.
I know. I was just thinking about George Michael there, huh? Yeah. Awesome. Well, great conversation. And, if this is interesting to you, like, go on the website. It's cool. Actually, whole new website now, new energy, this above the threshold website. And there's some great information on there about the coaching academy. And I'd love to have you join in if this feels resonance with you. Cause it's exciting what's happening, and we're seeing massive shifts. So awesome. Well, thanks so much for listening, everyone. Y'all have a great week. See you soon. We hope you enjoyed listening to today's podcast. And if you did, please subscribe so you can catch the next episode. If you want to learn more about the Aligned Living System and how it could support you in your life, check out davidwaldas.com.